This is Sales Management Mastery, Episode 6.
Welcome to Sales Management Mastery, where you get an insider's look on how to build, motivate, coach, and lead a high-performance, low-maintenance sales team. Here's your host, Ralph Burns.
Hello and welcome to Sales Management Mastery online at salesmanagementmastery.com. And we're here to help you and your sales managers build a team of highly motivated elite salespeople using easy-to-use, real-world sales management techniques and tactics that'll unleash a flood of new sales for your sales organization. On this week's episode of Sales Management Mastery, we're going to get into 4 proven methods to gently motivate your salespeople, talking about a variety of historical figures who have done that, and we're going to relate that over to the sales world. I'd like to remind you that if you'd like to get a jump start on creating your own team of supercharged salespeople using our proven system, you can claim your free test drive of the Sales Management Mastery Academy by going to salestraininggift.com. So great leaders in business, and especially those in the sales world, have often regarded people skills as their greatest assets in motivating and also leading. And there's lots of opportunities for you as a sales manager or for your sales managers to motivate during just mundane, sort of ordinary, everyday activities. And they could be anything from, and some of the examples that we're going to show here, from taking corrective action to criticism to just any sort of thing during the normal course of business. There's always an opportunity to motivate. And don't underestimate the power of some of these very simple techniques, because this is the stuff that actually really separates the men from the boys in sales management, or the girls from the women, so to speak, or the women from the girls when it comes to superior sales management, is motivating under ordinary circumstances. So we're going to give you 4 techniques here in certain situations for you to be able to motivate and lead while also staying true to your own management style. And one of the things that we really advocate a lot in Sales Management Mastery here and on this show is for you to be your own type of manager, not to be the type of manager that just because you were managed a certain way, you feel that should be the way that you should manage. You need to manage in your own way, and some of these techniques that we're going to teach you here today, you can adapt to your own circumstances based upon your own personality. So let's get right into the 4 proven techniques on motivating salespeople gently. So the first example is using humor as a motivator. And let me give you an example of somebody very famous, that you've probably seen in some of our videos before, is Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was a tremendous motivator and obviously the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. And sometimes he would make quite a few speeches to the House of Parliament, as well as throughout the community in Great Britain. And when he would write a speech, he would leave the text of the speech on his desk for his secretary to proofread, often maybe in the late afternoons or even in the early evenings. And he'd review her corrections the next morning after he had given her a chance in which to do it. He would oftentimes stay up very late and have a glass of brandy and a cigar and so forth and be writing all night and leave it on the desk and come in kind of late to the office the next day. So in an address that was to be delivered to Parliament one week, one of Churchill's key sentences that he had put into the speech ended with a preposition, which many of you probably know you're never supposed to end a sentence with a preposition, although we all do it. In the margin, though, his secretary had sort of pointed this out, and he suggested an alternative, or she had suggested an alternative that lacked kind of the impact that he was looking for. So instead of Churchill kind of responding and saying that's a lousy opportunity or a lousy suggestion, he responded with a short note that spoke volumes about his motivational leadership style. And the note was this. It said, "This is the sort of English up with which I will not put." Of course, ending his admonition, so to speak, with a preposition. So let me give you another example. Is Charles Schwab, who's another, not the Charles Schwab from the investment banking service, but he lived until about 1939. He was a huge industrialist. It was extremely successful. He ran U.S. Steel for quite some time. In the early 1920s, if you know anything about American history, the 1920s was a time where the economy was just absolutely booming, kind of in the 1990s in the stock market and that whole thing. So he was walking through one of his plants in the early 20s, and he was walking through the steel mill when he saw a couple of employees who were enjoying a cigarette break, but they were doing it in front of a no smoking sign. So instead of yelling at them or doing something that I think most of us would sort of do, what are you, blind? Can't you see the sign? Obviously this isn't a place where you're supposed to be smoking. He said something very differently, and he walked up to his embarrassed employees and offered them each a cigar. And he said, "I'll appreciate it, boys, if you'll smoke these on the outside." So that is the way to admonish people, by using a little bit of humor, but also keeping them motivated. I mean, imagine the big boss doing that to you, how you sort of save face, you have obviously gotten the message, but this is the kind of stuff that real great leaders and great motivators do on a consistent basis. And it's something that I highly encourage that you start incorporating into your strategy with your salespeople as well. So another example of a great historical figure that used humor to motivate and to lead as well was Ronald Reagan, and President of the United States in the 1980s, 1980 to 1988, I believe. He used humor quite a bit as well to sort of quell the tensions in the White House and during staff meetings, that kind of stuff. I mean, he would just let these killer one-liners go, and after things had heated up for a while, and then there'd just be this great sense of relief, and the meeting could go forward. I mean, there's a lot of aides that still even have what they call Reagan alumni associations, and I think there's 5,000 members of these Reagan alumni associations of people who had worked with him, who just loved him so much. So what he typically do is he just kind of let the room sort of just boil up into a fever pitch, and then he would just interject sort of a devastating one-liner right in the middle of it. And then once that's done, it just sort of dispels a lot of this sort of tension, and people become a lot more calm. And it's a great leadership interventional strategy as well as a tremendous motivator. And Reagan did this very, very consistently, and turned out to his legacy has been fairly strong from an American standpoint as far as what kind of president he was. I think he left a fairly good legacy, and he's very well regarded as a tremendous leader, as a tremendous motivator, as well as a very good communicator. So the bottom line here is that motivating and leading are very much intertwined. However, if you want to motivate people, you can do it gently, and you don't necessarily have to call them out onto the carpet, especially when they make mistakes. And people obviously don't want to screw up. But when they do, and when things do get maybe a little bit tense, using humor is an extremely effective way to really sort of dispel the tension and keep people on track and lead them and motivate them all the way. So that's our first tip here today on Leaders' Tip to Motivating very gently, is by using humor. Our number 2 tip is, which we get into quite a bit in our motivating course within the academy, but is to avoid